I want to tell you about Sherlock Holmes and why he's one of my favorite characters. Sherlock Holmes has a photographic memory. In fact, he has something more than a photographic memory. Sherlock Holmes, as you know, is a character in the famous books written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Popular character, has been represented in cinema, and is known for his wit and intelligence. But what most people don't know is that most of his abilities to solve impossible types of cases, to pick up the impossible type of clues, to remember details which are inhumanly difficult to remember, comes from his extremely powerful memory. And he uses a powerful memory technique to do what he's able to do. And the reason for his acclaim and his success as perhaps the best private detective ever to have created in the fictional or the non-fictional universe. So how does he do this? He uses a technique called the memory palace. Now, this is a very interesting thing. And if you've seen any of the depictions of his memory palace, it's basically the entire world that he's ever encountered. He's stored in his mind in the architecture of a palace, so that when he mentally moves through the palace, that physical place in his mind, when he mentally moves through those rooms, he has characterized and associated each object with something in his memory. And so he's been storing his memory on and on and on in extreme, exquisite detail in that palace. And so when he traces his steps back and he wishes to remember or recall any particular detail on any particular time, he has a mechanism and a system to do it. He has floors which represent years. He has pillars which represent different events, perhaps different months. And so he has this system, and it's a brilliant system. And it's the reason why he's able to do what he is able to do. And as UPSC aspirants, we don't want to build a memory palace or something as quite as sophisticated as he has done. But I want to tell you that even though he's a fictional character, stuff like this exists, and there are memory champions who can accomplish incredible tasks of memory, and they can memorize seemingly infinite amounts of information, right? And that sounds quite a lot like the UPSC syllabus. You having to memorize seemingly infinite amounts of information. So what can you do about this? What can you do about this? Of course, in my previous videos and all throughout my interaction with you, I've been talking about conceptual clarity and emphasizing on it quite a bit, because that forms the bedrock of everything. But we cannot ignore the memory. We cannot ignore the memorization part. We cannot ignore the details. One has to capture the details. There's really no escaping the facts and the data, especially when it comes to the prelims, right? How do you do this? What is the other half of the equation? The other half of the equation is, of course, memory. And today we'll talk about that, and I'll share with you some very interesting, very cool, very interesting techniques. And I'm not going to talk about some cliched type of things which you might think. I'm going to talk about some very concrete examples. I will take you through some which I have created myself, and then we're going to talk about a very interesting challenge which is coming your way. So prepare yourself, and let us go on for the ride. The first thing you need to realize is that our memories are visual, and we process information visually. You have heard me say this before, but there's a way to properly use it in your preparation, in your study, right? And what I typically do and always recommend, that everything that you read or study, try to associate it with an image. The richer the image, the more vivid and the more impactful the image, the longer the information is going to be remembered. Now, this doesn't mean that you only go and search for information or images that are out there. You can create your own. Right? Yes, you don't have to create very sophisticated ones. You can just create doodles. Just create doodles on your book. I do that all the time. And even though that sounds childish, I can assure you that the efficiency and the power of the technique cannot be overstated. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid of looking like a child and scribbling and using colors. I do it all the time, and I recommend that you do that also. And so let's take our first example from Indian polity. You want to say memorize all the schedules of the constitution. Now you know that this constitution, or you will get to know soon enough, is divided into these schedules, and it has these different parts in which it is organized. How do you remember which schedule uh, pertains to what type of content in the constitution? What are the schedules? And of course, it's a very common way. You've done this before, of course. I know as a student, everybody understands what mnemonics are and how it works. This is just a very simple mnemonic of how to use the acronyms Acronyms, as you know, are just short forms. You take the first alphabet of the list or the information that you want to remember, you string it together in some form of a word or a phrase or meaning. In this case, Tears of Old PM corresponds to the first letter of each of these uh, titles for the schedule. Acronyms are simple enough. Everyone uses them. Everyone has encountered them. It is a little bit different when you have to memorize them in order, right? So when you need to memorize them in order, and the sequence cannot be disturbed, then you use acrostic. So this is an example of an acrostic, but don't worry about these technical details. This is just to get you warmed up. The second thing that's very interesting and important, and I'm sure you already know, but I have to repeat it for the sake of clarity or for those who don't know, is that you have to personalize the information, right? If you do not engage with information, if you do not connect it to yourself, it is very hard for your brain to understand it because you need to give it some reason to understand it. And the way to give it the reason to understand it is to associate the information that's already there with what you're reading, right? I know this sounds a little bit abstract, but just bear with me and I'm going to take you into some interesting examples and some things which are going to really help you. Let us take the example of another mnemonic, which is how do you memorize the states which have bicameral legislature, right? The states in which there are two types of layers of government, and you will figure out later what bicameral legislature is. But the essence of it is that these are the states which have that, and you need to memorize this. So you simply make a acronym, and while making acronym, also use humor whenever you can. This is the reason I've shown you this particular one. Use humor or use a word which sticks in your mind. Don't create acronyms which don't mean anything or which will easily be forgotten, because then you will have to create more mnemonics to memorize them. Don't do that. Remember a word which is going to hit your mind and it's going to stick there. Like this word, like tumbak, or whatever it means. It is humorous and it's kind of sticks, and you don't tend to forget it once you've read it a bunch of times. Some more examples of what mnemonics are and how they are used. They're simple enough. If you want to remember the sessions of Lok Sabha and the budget monsoon winter session, what are they called? Although this is too basic, it's too basic. I'm just using it as an example, as a template to take you through it. BMW forms a nice acronym. Everybody has heard of BMW, although I doubt how many people actually know what the full form of it is. And if you want to remember the writs of the Constitution, this is another acronym, another mnemonic which you can use, CPM headquarters. You could use the same type of system or slightly more nuanced system, so more sophisticated systems, to memorize the entire list of the articles of the Constitution when they pertain to Panchayati Raj. And they start with Article 243, 243A to 243O. So that's a total of 16 articles, and each of these articles defines something, the duration of the Panchayati Raj, what type of system there are going to be, and so on and so forth. And you need to memorize which one corresponds to which, right? And that's not easy to do because 16 can be a long list, and there's also some conceptual overlays for this type of content. So what do? I am going to be sending to you a lesson, a beautifully written, wonderfully articulated article by Amit Kumar Singh IRS, and he has defined some very useful tricks which he used, and he was always short of time for preparation, and this is one of them. And this, you will find that he is using a system of keywords here. He's using a system of keywords here, and 243A, he's using the first word A, and the keyword here is Gram Sabha, and the connecting word that he's using to memorize A, and that A, 243A pertains to Gram Sabha, is that Aam Aadmi, every voter. So he's using the first letter A and he's connecting it with the connecting word, the first letter of the connecting word. So Aam Aadmi, or the common man. It's the Hindi word for the common man. B, he's using constitution, and he's using Hindi, and constitution, he's connecting it with banaya. Banaya means make, to make, and the constitution literally, in a literal sense, means to compose, to constitute, right? And so that's his own system of using. We can just take inspiration from this and use our own. C, composition, and he's kept it as composition. He wants to remember Article 243D, and that pertains to reservations. So how does he remember it? he uses the connecting word due representation to women SC/ST. And so due representation is a commonly used word in polity. You will figure out, you'll find that word repeated again and again. And he connects the first word of due representation with the letter of the article 243D, and due representation to women SC/ST, and so representation to SC/ST apparently, and you can make the connection with the reservation system. So you will always know, as soon as you hear 243D and somebody asks you what is 243D, you will immediately think of due representation to women, and you will figure out that if it's going to be due representation of women, it has something to do with reservations, and so you will be able to figure out what that is. For E, he uses something similar. Article 243E pertains to the duration of the elected bodies at the local level, and he's used the word end, and that's simple enough. See, notice what he's done for 243F. F stands for disqualification, and at what type of situation a member of the elected representative of local bodies will get disqualified. What can disqualify them? And so he's used the word fail. Obviously, a very organic connection there. And I will be sending you this article along with a number of other tricks and techniques, quite a number of them that he's used. And all of these are very versatile. You can use these too. But it's going to get very interesting because I'm going to put you to the test. But before I do, I want to explain to you my favorite mnemonic system. My favorite mnemonic system, which is very versatile, very useful, and almost never fails me. In fact, never fails me. It's just that I fail sometimes to put in the effort to literally use it in a way. If I use the system to memorize a list or piece of information, it always stays with me. And it is so versatile because you will not only be able to use it for numbers. So say you want to memorize numbers, but you'll also be able to use it for storytelling and that personal association which I mentioned. And you might be able to associate with humor, and you will be able to visualize it. So what is the system? The system is this. I use a combination of the sound mnemonic and forget about the technical stuff. This is a very popular technique, and it goes like this. 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe, 3 is a tree, 4 is a door, 5 is a hive, 6 is sticks, 7 is heaven, 8 is a gate, 9 is a fine, and 10 is a hen. Okay, so these are phonemes. They are similar sounding words, and always, as soon as you hear that 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe, so since they're rhyming words, you'll always be able to have that connection, and this mnemonic will get stored in your mind. Now you will be able to connect a lot of other information with this mnemonic, and I'll give you an example of how to do that. I told you, and I'll repeat again for the sake of your memory. 1 is a bun, 2 is a shoe, 3 is a tree, 4 is a door, 5 is a hive, 6 is sticks, 7 is heaven, 8 is a gate, 9 is a fine, and 10 is a hen. So we have number 1 to 9. Now, I also told you that you should not only should you personalize, you should also visualize. And this is a good example of visualization. It's a mnemonic system I made to demonstrate all of these techniques in action to you. And I want to take you through the Woods Dispatch. The Woods Dispatch was an important commission during the British times, which was set up in 1854. And the objective of that mission was to overhaul and see to the state of education in India, in colonial India, when the British held dominion in India. So in 1854, there was the Woods Dispatch, right? And so the first thing for you to remember is 1854. Now that doesn't sound like a date which anybody can organically remember because it doesn't really associate with anything. I mean, everybody knows that the revolt happened in 1857, but how do you memorize 1854? And I'll tell you that. So the dispatch was 1854, and it was for education, and it is very important to know because it has been asked so many times in the UPSC exam. I'm not saying that it's going to get asked again, but I want you to realize that when these very important type of contents are encountered, they are worth spending some time to create a system or a mnemonic which captures a lot of information. So the Woods Dispatch essentially suggested a few things. A very important thing, that is why it is UPSC's favorite. The Woods Dispatch suggested that education in India should be in local language, and they recommended the education of women and English medium. So there were a few recommendations, but these were the main ones which stood out. I want to remember all this information. I don't have the time to read it again and again. Say for example, I want to make a mnemonic out of it and I want to make sure it sticks in my memory forever, right? What do? I can always remember that it was in the 19th century, so it's 1800 something. I want to remember the date. It's 1854 in this case. I already know it's the 18th century. I obviously know it's not going to be the 20th or the 17th century. I know it's the 19th century. It's 1800 something, but 1800 what exactly? How do I memorize 54? 54, I told you, 5 is a hive of bees, and 6 is sticks, right? And 4 is a door. Okay, so 4 is a mole. Let us assume that 4 is a mole, and a mole is an animal. The animal which digs underground. Okay, let's assume 4 is a mole, and you can change your system accordingly. But whatever you use in the system, just keep it constant. So in my system here, 4 is a mole, 5 is a hive. 54 means that there must be a hive, so there must be honeybees in the picture, and there has to be a mole in the picture. And I memorize it like this. I say that the wood dispatch was set up in 1854. In the woods, there was a hive of bumblebees. One day, a mole went into the hive to educate female bees and taught them in local bee language and stressed that female bees should also be educated. So it's a very enlightened mole who's gone all the way up into the hornet's nest, into the beehive, and recommended a bunch of liberal intellectual things about bees. And I have no idea why the mole would do that, but that's what the mole does. And because I have used this system of mnemonic and I've used this type of imagery and I've created this image to show you, it is not something you can easily forget, can you? You will always be able to tell now with this mole and this bee that it was in 1854, and it captures a number of other associated information with it, which is that suggested local languages, suggested female languages, right? And so this is the way we can capture a lot of information. This at times takes a lot of ingenuity, it takes a lot of effort, but for the important information, it is worth it. You see, the thing with mnemonics and memory techniques is that they work wonderfully well, but they sometimes take some time to construct, right? It is not very feasible or always possible to have somebody else's mnemonics be available to you. Okay, that might or might not happen. It's always best that you make your own. And it's always best to put some effort in these right at the beginning, because this is not like typical memory. Once a mnemonic is made, once a good mnemonic is made, it is very, very unlikely, very difficult to forget, in fact. But the problem with it is that it takes a little bit of initial investment of time and effort to make it just once. And then the return on investment is very high, right? So you see, this Woods Dispatch is just one small incident in the huge, humongous ocean of the historical narrative and the syllabus for history. Am I supposed to do this for every single one? No. You can use the same system to capture larger amounts of information, right? You can use the same system to memorize what were the centers of the 1857 revolt, right? And how it progressed. What happened, you can use it to memorize all those reforms in history and polity, the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, the Morley-Minto reforms, what were the changes, what were the suggestions that were made, right? So a number of systems of these mnemonic systems, when combined, give us the perfect mix. What are the systems going on here as a means of demonstration? Visualization, easily visible. Phonetic system, in that which I told you about, 5 is a hive and 4 is a mole. Phonetic system is used, rhyming words are used, storytelling is used, visualization of course has been used. And so once all of these are combined, more number of information can be captured. Now notice that I have made a very simple story. I could make that story a little elaborate. I could go on and add more information on this basic narrative, right? And I want you to do the same. And that brings me to a very interesting challenge which I wish to initiate, I wish to inaugurate. That challenge today, I'm going to put you to the test. And this test is going to be very enjoyable for you. You're going to enjoy this, okay? This is the memorization challenge for UPSC. We are going to try and capture the entire syllabus, hopefully. What everybody is afraid of, we're going to do while having fun, we're going to do while enjoying ourselves, and we'll do in a way, in a quality that surpasses everyone else, okay? And it is you who will do it. And I am going to tell you exactly how to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I will be sending you the details of this. I will be sending you the details of this challenge and how exactly you have to do it. It'll go on for a long time. We'll have them weekly, so we have some weekly sorts of challenges and some type of arrangement about how to cover as much as we can. And we'll start with polity. We'll start with polity because that is the most relevant, and I think it's going to get you the maximum ROI. If you do this stuff for polity, it is very, very likely you're going to hit upon 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, maybe even more questions in the exam. And that polity just happens to be something which makes itself so easily available to mnemonics because there are articles of constitution, there are names to be remembered, there are these criteria and sub points and subtopics to be remembered, and it all fits very well in these type of narratives. You can use acronyms, you can use visualization, you can use some other types of systems which I'll be listing in the lesson, which I want you to go through before you take this challenge. Yes. What happens when you undertake the challenge? So we'll have some type of weekly system here, and every week we'll have a winner. Okay, for as long as this challenge goes on, there will be a winner. I will take the name of the winner weekly, one word, one winner, and I am going to put that person's name in my next book, and it will remain in that book with a badge of honor, which I'll put forever. As long as that book is in production, is in distribution, that winner's name will be there. And I'll do that for all the winners that undertake this challenge. Okay. So if your name enters there, it's going to go there and it's going to live there for eternity, for probably a long, long time, many, many years. So that's what we're going to do. These mnemonic systems that I've mentioned, I'll give you some very good examples. I'm going to send you a lesson. I want you to use these to cover your syllabus starting from polity. I don't want this challenge to interrupt the rest of your studies. This is something which you can do simultaneously. Spend a bit of time every day to capture a chunk of information in mnemonical systems and in systems which make sense. Okay, and we'll have that in a very structured way, and I hope that you'll have a lot of fun with it because it's going to get very interesting. However, when I do give you this challenge, I want you to remember that you make systems, right? You make systems. Don't be disrespectful or make something which you don't feel proud of. And sometimes, you know, you might want to use some words which you can otherwise not use in your mnemonic systems. It's better not to do that because it always creates a sense of negativity, I feel. And so keep it very nice and clean, be creative, apply your mind, take interest in it. And there's another reason why it's going to be really awesome and wonderful. And that is, if I give you something, if I say, give you a chapter of Laxmikant to create a mnemonical system on, and ask you to capture this and this and this. If you are able to capture it in the mnemonics, regardless of your mnemonic, you will have remembered it. You will not forget it. If you have captured it in mnemonics, it means you have churned it in your mind in 5 different ways. It will never leave your memory, right? And if you're doing this on a periodic basis, which is exactly what you should do, right? You will have, at the end of the day, a larger bank of memory than Sherlock Holmes, because Sherlock Holmes is not a UPSC aspirant, right? So you're up against the best, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that you will follow through, and let's start doing this. All the best.